core to my ministry started in prison. And so my ministry started from the vantage point of a marginalized African-American male in a system that supported the marginalization of the culture, and it was subcultures within a culture. And so in prison, when I developed my relationship with God, I was 25 years old when I first got saved. And so I had already had around 6 years in, around there, and a number of my friends that I knew or had met in prison and grew up with were also practicing faiths at that time too. I remember having this conversation with a European friend of mine who was the imam of the Muslim community. And he said, and we were walking the yard, and he said, you know, I believe in the Quran and all that it shares, and you believe in, you know, the Bible and Jesus Christ. He said, do you believe that I'm going to hell if I die? And I said, well, first of all, that's not my decision to make. I can't subscribe to where you're going or where you're not going. And it was an opportunity for me to share my story regarding my near-death experience. And, you know, I believe at that time when I was laying in that alley praying that God had heard my prayers. And there was a peace that was in my heart, whether I was going to heaven, if that's a place in the sky, where I felt the peace that my transition was going to be one to look forward to. And so I shared that with him. It was a budding relationship, and I began to realize that my life wasn't just about kind of isolating or siloing out and telling, you know, and saying who can and who can't. My ministry was about really inclusion. As I've grown to understand it, above every name is the name of our church. That title came from Philippians 2:9, a scripture in the Bible where Paul is talking of Jesus' humility and saying, though he was the Son of God, you know, God in the flesh, that he didn't think it was, you know, basically right to be equal with God. So he took on the brow of a bondservant. And because he was humble, God gave Jesus, his son, a name that was above every name. And so above every name to me speaks to the social stigmas and the labels and the names and the identities that are placed upon us, that we place upon ourselves, that in some respects imprison us in a life of, you know, kind of stagnation in some respects. And never give us permission to rise above that. And so above every name is the kind of ministry where I want to invite people to come in and live who you're supposed to be and rise above it. If you were statistics like they say that I was, you have an opportunity to rise above it, of the circumstance and situation, and don't allow the labels that you placed upon yourself or those that were placed upon you to define you. And so that's the carriage of my ministry.